This lecture will conclude our look at the expansion of consumerism in the post-war period. At the end of this lecture, we will talk a little bit more about the relationship between the new consumerism, the enlarged mass culture that brought increased conformity, and how that related to control of the American population. This lecture focuses on a third element of American society that changed dramatically in the decades following World War II and proved to be a fertile area for entrepreneurs. We have looked at standardization in housing and lodging. Now we're going to look at dining. Specifically, we're going to look at the birth of fast food. This story starts with the McDonald brothers, Richard and Maurice, and how one hot dog stand led to one hamburger stand that would eventually become a global phenomenon. Here you have a picture of the McDonald brothers, Richard and Maurice. During World War II, the McDonald brothers lived in San Bernardino, California. They set up a hot dog stand in an industrial area where war production factories operated around the clock. Workers flocked to their hot dog stand during lunch breaks, and the brothers dealt with the crush of customers by limiting their sales to only one product, hot dogs. The hot dogs came in a plain bun, wrapped as soon as they came off the grill. Condiments were set up on tables outside the stand where customers could serve themselves. Customers were encouraged to provide exact change, and the line moved very quickly. The brothers sold one item, and that item only came one way, a plain hot dog in a bun. After the war, the brothers decided to switch to hamburgers, to which they would apply their hot dog stand production methods, which they called the speedy service system. The brothers hated the waste of condiments that they had to clean up every day at their hot dog stand, so they decided that the burgers would be dressed with ketchup and onions when they came off the grill. Their hamburgers only came dressed one way, although you could also get a cheeseburger, you guessed it, dressed that same way. Still, the McDonald brothers added French fries and a variety of drinks to their menu. But the menu remained simple enough to make for rapid service. Sadly, perhaps, no more hot dogs. The brothers opened their first McDonald's in 1948. They built it in an area of San Bernardino where they hoped to attract young families looking for a fast, inexpensive meal. The brothers didn't like many things about existing drive-in restaurants where people ordered food and ate in their cars. They especially didn't like car hops, the pretty teenaged girls that took orders and brought the orders to cars. Car hops tended to waste time flirting with teenaged boys. The brothers hated waste and inefficiency, and they weren't trying to create a teenage hangout. There was no inside dining at early McDonald's, so no need for a wait staff or a dining room. You ordered food at the counter and picked it up there. They had a limited menu consisting of hamburgers, cheeseburgers, fries, milkshakes, and other drinks. They offered a uniform product. There were no substitutions. They guaranteed a fast product. Your food was free if it was not ready in 5 minutes. It was also free if someone got your order wrong. This is an image of the first McDonald's. As you can see, a hamburger cost 15 cents, and customers were encouraged to buy them by the bag to take home. The brothers confidently advertised their burgers as famous, although that was hardly the case, yet anyway. McDonald's claims to have sold their 100 millionth burger in 1958, just 10 years after serving their first. They sold their billionth burger in 1962 and their 45th billionth burger in 1983. They quit counting after selling their 99th billionth burger in 1993. Since then, they just claim to have sold billions and billions of burgers. Here is an image of an early McDonald's menu along with prices. Take note of the milkshakes, as that becomes an important part of the McDonald's story. That first McDonald's was a smashing success, and the brothers began to build additional locations, mostly near areas where there were lots of young families. It wasn't long before they began to franchise their stores. It was very important to the McDonald's brothers to maintain uniformity in product and service across all their stores, and that was reflected in their franchise contracts. Franchisees could only own one store for a period of time. This allowed the brothers to make sure that they were going to maintain the McDonald's traditions and standards. Every burger had to taste the same in every location. The brothers wanted any customer patronizing a McDonald's anywhere to get exactly the same product. The brothers' refund policy had to be maintained. The stores had to be located in safe areas of town. They had to be kept extremely clean. The staff had to be well groomed, friendly, and polite to children. Adding to the emphasis on the welfare of children and providing a family-friendly environment, there could be no cigarette machines or pinball machines on the premises of any McDonald's. Finally, we come to the person that we all associate with McDonald's, Ray Kroc. Indeed, many people have no idea that there even were brothers named McDonald who started the restaurant chain. So who was Ray Kroc, and how did he take the franchise to the next levels? Remember when I said to pay attention to the milkshakes? Well, Ray Kroc happened to be a milkshake machine salesman, and a really good one. Very early on, he sold the McDonald brothers 8 multi-mixers, a single machine that could make 3 milkshakes at the same time. Very efficient. Kroc developed a close relationship with the brothers and bought one of the first 9 franchises. Ray Kroc was very entrepreneurial. He kept pushing the McDonald brothers to expand nationally and to add products and services like indoor dining rooms. But the brothers had all the success they needed and were more interested in spending time with their families. Ultimately, Kroc bought the company from the brothers and rapidly began to open more stores. Kroc pursued all kinds of schemes for making McDonald's a household a name for all Americans. One interesting thing he did was to turn to his friend Walt Disney. Kroc and Disney became friends during their time as ambulance drivers in World War I. Kroc used that connection to open a McDonald's in Disneyland, the ultimate vacation destination for middle-class American families. Many of those vacationing families ate at McDonald's in Disneyland and became eager customers when a store opened in their home communities. Suburban developments, chain motels, fast food are only 3 of the many, many changes that filled America with new forms of consumer goods that became national in scope. They represented conformity both in the nature of the products. A McDonald's hamburger tasted the same in Kansas, California, or Connecticut, and also represented conformity in the fact that Americans increasingly turned to these new consumer goods. The experience of an American middle-class family became more and more the same, regardless of where they lived. These things, consumerism and conformity, are pretty easy to see. But what does this have to do with control? In the first lecture of this unit, we said that the Soviet Union controlled their population through economic stability and direct control, while the US controlled its population through consumerism, conformity, and fear of communism. We need to make one thing very clear. Almost all of the changes that took place during the early Cold War were directed at the white middle class. The wealthy went about their lives as they always had. They didn't live in Levittowns, stay in Holiday Inns, or eat at McDonald's. None of these would have been a step up for them. Neither did African Americans or the poor live in Levittowns or stay at Holiday Inns, though poor whites might eat occasionally at McDonald's. African Americans were largely denied access to the rising middle class. It was the white middle class that was the target of control. These were the people who could vote in large numbers and who could challenge what was going on in the country. Remember, African Americans in the South were completely denied the vote. Elsewhere in the nation, state laws and local election boards made it very hard for the poor and minorities to vote. So keeping the white middle class happy was essential to American leadership. I'm not saying that the leaders of the nation sat down, had a big conference, and planned things out, but a growing white middle class that felt it had a fair share of the American pie and the opportunity to get more was not likely to challenge the status quo. As William Levitt pointed out, a man who owns his own home and lot is too busy to be a communist, too busy to pay much attention to things outside his own everyday life experience. This growing white middle class was larger and was doing better economically than ever before in the history of the nation. To a large extent, they lived in bubbles with other people exactly like themselves, as Malvina Reynolds' song Little Boxes suggests. It wasn't that they couldn't complain, they just didn't see the need to. And if you could convince the middle class that the biggest danger to their way of life was communism, then you could exercise a lot of control over them. If you could make them believe that a communist invasion was always imminent, and that communists were trying to take over from within through the demands of labor unions and minority groups seeking more rights and more access to the American pie, then you could absolutely exercise a lot of control.